Last month, more than 3,200 local leaders from across the country came together in Washington, D.C. for NLC's annual Congressional City Conference. The goal there is for them to advocate on the Hill for communities all over America. For this month's episode, I'm excited to share today a conversation from the conference that occurred on the main stage with U.S. Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska and U.S. Representative Salud Carbajal from California. The conversation was moderated by Irma Esparza Diggs, NLC's Senior Executive and Director of Federal Advocacy. The congressman discussed national defense, the threat of government shutdowns, and affordable housing. But what makes this conversation so fascinating is their bipartisan focus on getting things done for their constituents back home by taking the time to listen and talk to each other. This is a lesson that everyone in municipal government lives by every day and works to share as a role model to every other level of government. So thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show.
So now I am thrilled to introduce this afternoon's Fireside Chat, which is going to feature two members of Congress in conversation with our NLC Senior Executive Director of Federal Advocacy, Irma Esparza Diggs. Yes, we love Irma. We are going to hear about how our two guests are prioritizing working across party lines in Congress to get things done for our common constituents as members of the Problem-Solvers Caucus. Our special guests today are U.S. Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska's 2nd Congressional District, and U.S. Representative, yes, big applause, and U.S. Representative Salud Carbajal of California's 24th Congressional District. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage alongside Irma Esparza Diggs.
Wow, that's a big room.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. The food smells good, too.
I know you're hungry. And you've got votes to get to. First of all, I just want to thank you for your service in our armed forces. It is a pleasure to have you here, both Congressman Bacon and Congressman Carbajal.
Thank you.
From the great state of Nebraska and California. I know we've got a lot to cover. We've got a lot to cover this afternoon, and you have votes to get to in a minute. So we're going to get right into it. Today, we're here to talk about the bipartisan leadership that you both admirably demonstrate in this Congress and since you've been elected. As Mayor Sander mentioned already, you both are members of the Problem-Solvers Caucus, the military caucus. The Problem-Solvers Caucus in particular is focused on finding bipartisan solutions to address our nation's most pressing challenges. Everyone in this audience thanks you for that commitment, as we've heard a lot about the need for more bipartisanship. That's what local leaders do every day. And today we're going to talk about how we can continue to partner with you to get this done. And one last thing. Today we are lucky enough to be recording this segment for our monthly podcast, City Speak with Clarence Anthony, which is normally hosted by our own CEO, Clarence Anthony. And each month, he sits down with local leaders, federal leaders, and experts to talk about the toughest challenges facing America and America's communities, cities, towns, and villages. And today, I'm thrilled to be a guest host on the podcast. So please, make sure you all check out this episode when it's published at the beginning of April, and all of our previous conversations by searching for City Speak with Clarence Anthony wherever you get your podcasts. It is not to be missed. So, without further ado, let's get things started with our first question. So, it is clear you both are very close friends. Yet, the narrative of this Congress is that there isn't much bipartisanship. At the local level, city leaders have no choice but to problem solve and innovate for their residents. We often say there's no Republican or Democratic way to fill a pothole, as you well both know, being both former local elected officials yourselves. And as members of the House, and particularly within the Problem-Solvers Caucus, what do you do to foster bipartisanship for our nation's municipal governments, our cities, towns, and villages? So I'll start with you, Congressman Bacon.
Thank you, Irma, and it's a treat for me to be here with my friend Salud. I have traveled all over the world with him. If I had to pick one member of the House to hang out with, it is Salud. He is a lot of fun. I enjoy him, and he's a good man. I've been to his district. He's been to my district. He likes prime rib in California, or in Nebraska, and I like his wine in California. So. And I want to thank all of you. I work closely with our mayors. We have Mayor Grosser here from Ralston. Nebraska's in our district, but we work with you on our priorities, and that forms a good partnership with the federal delegations that are here. Now, talking about bipartisanship in Congress, it is true that what Irma says, we are divided in the House, divided in the Senate, divided government, and it is hard. And I learned in 2017 when we first were elected, while we were passing a records amount of legislation in the House, nothing was getting passed in the Senate. So I had to sit back and say, okay, what do we got to do differently? Well, you got to work with the other side of the aisle to get bipartisan bills, because that's the only way to get stuff out of the Senate. So from that, I joined the Problem Solvers. I became part of the Four Country Caucus, which is half Republican and half Democrat veterans. And you realize to get something out of the House, that's not a law. It's got to get out of the Senate as well, and it's got to be signed by the president. The only way to do that is working with your friends across the aisle to find consensus areas, and that's what gets signed into law. So Salud and I are both on the Problem Solvers. We're on the Four Country Caucus. By the way, we're also on the Armed Services Committee together, and we're on the Ag Committee together, so we have a great opportunity to work together on countless issues, whether it's restoring our nuclear deterrence, which most of it's outdated. I'm working on quality of life right now, and that is a total bipartisan effort. You know, we have 1 out of 8 military people are on food stamps right now. It's unacceptable. Our barracks are getting failing grades. So this takes a bipartisan effort to fix. And when it comes to the Ag Committee, passing a farm bill is bipartisan. It has to be bipartisan in this environment.
That's right. You can clap it up for those priorities.
And I'm on like 7 different caucuses as a chair, but I'm on the foster care caucus. That is a bipartisan effort. You know, our number one homeless population today are folks coming out of foster care. We got to make a better transition for them. And so anyway, Salud and I are on so many different bills of each other, trying to help out our priorities. And I wouldn't be nearly as effective today if it wasn't for Salud. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Congressman Carbajal.
Well, I think you heard from Bacon what good friends we become. We have sought each other out to work across the aisle, to identify areas where we can agree on, to co-sponsor legislation. And whether it's to protect our firefighters, provide more housing for our veterans, to move forward the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, the Farm Bill, we have and continue to work on making sure that legislation goes forward. Bacon is certainly, he's being a little humble. He's was a general in the United States Air Force. And it's great hanging out with him when we go to bases, because I wasn't quite that high in rank when I was in the Marine Corps. So they lay out the red carpet with him. That's why I like to travel with him sometimes. You know, in terms of bipartisanship, I'm lucky. I was one of you. I was a county supervisor for 12 years and chief of staff for another 12 years in local government. Yeah. And what Bacon said is correct. You know, in my local government, I learned that partisan politics is not as pervasive, that you work across the aisle, you work with anyone and everyone to get things done, just like we try to do in Congress. I think the fact that we're military veterans is another thing that has really helped us to work, to strive, to put country over politics and over party. And that has really helped us identify those commonalities and a reason to work together. In the military, there's really no Republicans and Democrats when it comes to fulfilling our mission for our nation and our freedoms and our democracy. What do you do to promote bipartisanship also in the district? Well, what I have found coming from local government is that when I go back and interface with my constituents, I call all elected officials. I don't just call the Democrats because I'm a Democrat when there's a disaster. I call everyone, mayors, supervisors, council members, chiefs of police, fire chiefs, from all walks of life. I don't single out Democrats just because I'm a Democrat. So I try to model the way. I think Don and I try to do that in Congress. We have a great friendship. We met each other's families. We've traveled to each other's districts. I'm not sure that our parties necessarily appreciated that, but we wanted to model the way as well. But I think you have to live by your values and model the way. Talk is cheap. Everybody loves to talk about bipartisanship because for many, it sounds great. Both Democrats and Republicans like that. But to walk the talk is the most important. Actions speak louder than words. And if you look at our records, I think you find that we try to live up to those ethos and those values.
Absolutely, and we see it, and we thank you for that. So lately, I don't think there hasn't been a day that's gone by that budget shutdown, potentially federal budget shutdown, has been a headline. So, and we've seen that appropriations fights have gripped this Congress. But cities, towns, and villages rely on various federal funding streams delivered in a dependable manner. So what should local leaders going to Capitol Hill tomorrow, actually, say to help remove political obstacles from government funding and ensure that elected officials here in Washington understand the importance of timely, reliable, and direct federal funding to local governments? Congressman Carbajal, I'm going to start with you first.
Well, let your members of Congress know how you, local governments, our communities throughout the country are being impacted. You can't plan, there's uncertainty, it's difficult to meet the mission of local governments. So impress upon us what the impact looks like on the ground when we in Congress are not able to meet our mission of governing. So impress upon them as vivid as you can, as tangible as you can, what those impacts look like for the American people, and I think it goes a long way.
Thank you. Congressman Bacon, anything to add?
I think it's important to share with our federal delegation, your federal delegation, what is the impact of a continuing resolution to you? And what is the impact of a government shutdown? I know folks on my side of the aisle, I think they're a minority, that think these are not problems, but I know differently. I know our military suffers under CRs. There's one thing worse than a CR, that's a shutdown. We don't pay our military, we don't pay our border patrol, I could just go on. But it also has impacts on our cities and our counties, our local, our local governance. So I think it's important to share the impacts. Two, it's been very helpful for me to hear from our mayors, our county officials, our sheriffs, what kind of things that we could be doing at the federal level to help them out. And so like we had 6 of our appropriations bills just done. I've been able to get $33 million in this last batch of 6 appropriations that be targeted towards different needs within the community, like our airport, our sewer systems in one county, emergency communications here. I wouldn't have known to do any of that if it wasn't for the mayors and the local officials saying, hey, these are our priorities. So share your priorities.
Hand clap for your advocacy.
Yeah. You make a difference when you share what you need.
Absolutely. So, Congressman Bacon, I have a question for you. The southern border and Ukraine funding splits the parties and has really created and continues to create a division within them. But reporting says that you are building a bipartisan coalition to advance these 2 priorities. What is the key to finding bipartisanship on such tough issues as these?
I'm of the opinion we need all the above when it comes to these priorities. When you pull our district, border security is the number 1, number 2, number 3 issue. Many of our cities are struggling with 8 million migrants, like in Denver, 700,000 people in Denver, 40,000 migrants. And so a lot of their services are struggling. You see it in Chicago and New York. So we know we got to do it, and that probably divides maybe the Democrat Party more than it does us. It's a priority for us. But then you get to Ukraine, that divides us to a degree, but I think it's in our national security interest to support Ukraine. Putin's the invader, and I'm the party of Reagan. We stand up to people like these Russian leaders, and they're doing the fighting. So, but that's not, it divides our party. And then when you go to Israel, I'm an ally of Israel. I served in Israel. I helped do missile defense there when I was a colonel. And with that has some divisions on the Democrat Party. And Taiwan's also one of these priorities. So we have a compromise bill because we don't think the Senate version is going to pass the House for various reasons. But I was listening to the Speaker. The Speaker's worried about a $95 billion price tag. He wants it smaller. We'd like more military aid focus versus humanitarian. And he wants to have something that fixes the border. So our bill, I worked with Brian Fitzpatrick and our colleagues, Jared Golden on the Democrat side, also Ed Case from Hawaii. By the way, 2 veterans out of that group as well. And we came up with a bill that will do Remain in Mexico, a Title 42 form that means you have to have approval to come here. Most effective border security you can have. But it also provides military aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And it's a 30% less than the Senate bill. And so we're putting that on that bill has been introduced, and we're now doing a discharge petition. And why do we got to do a discharge petition? If the Speaker puts a bill on the floor right now, it's going to require 290 votes out of 435. I can go through the math on it. It's because we have people in our own party that upset the rules. If we do a discharge petition and get 218 people on the discharge, all we need is 218 votes to pass this. And so that's what we're aiming to do. And I don't think it's a perfect bill yet. I think we're going to massage it and make some improvements so we can attract more Democrats and Republicans alike. But we're working it.
And I know your mayors and city council members will be reaching out to you to give you some input on how to get that done. And please don't hesitate to let us know where we can communicate the latest with that. So, thank you, General. Congressman Carbajal, let me ask you, given long-standing challenges in the housing market, which has very much been a priority, much discussion here at our Congressional City Conference, it seems like every city and town is searching for new solutions to increase affordable housing and reduce homelessness. You have a bill that NLC supports. We advocated for it and are advocating for it. It's called the Naomi Swartz Safe Parking Program. And what it would do is it would increase flexibility for homeless assistance grants and allow spending on safe spaces and services for people living out of their vehicles, their cars, whatever it is they have. Who is Naomi Swartz and who the bill is named after?
Well, Naomi Swartz was my boss that introduced, my former boss, Supervisor Naomi Swartz, who introduced me into public policy and county government. She hired me to be her chief of staff, which brought me into the world of public policy. And she was an extraordinary leader and somebody who I think epitomized what we want in our leaders serving us as elected officials. She was the one that embraced this idea that was brought to the Board of Supervisors back then by then Supervisor Susan Rose. And it was Supervisor Schwartz who said, I'm glad to do that in my district. And I had to field all the calls as her chief of staff because it was done in downtown affluent Santa Barbara. Downtown. And so reasonably so, many people had a lot of concerns. What are you doing? What are you doing providing this safe parking space with all the stereotype and NIMBY considerations of bringing people who are near homeless, living in their cars, to this parking lot, county government parking lot? And sure, we only had fear to fear itself because it worked out. A safe haven, secure place with sanitary environments were provided so that people that are close to being completely homeless on the streets, who are living in vans and in cars, could actually go someplace safe have bathrooms, and to sleep overnight in a secure place and not be ticketed or harassed or pushed out by many neighborhoods because they're concerned about what blight that brings to their neighborhoods. And it was an extraordinary program, first in the country. I now have a bill trying to scale that up for the entire country. It's been duplicated in many communities throughout the country in the state of California. And it's only one solution, in addition to the Housing for All bill that I'm a co-sponsor and the DASH Act. Again, it's just one little piece. It's not the panacea, but it's another tool to help with this housing crisis and individuals that are houseless and homeless in our country.
Thanks for listening to City Speak with Clarence Anthony. If you like this show, let us know. Share this episode with your friends and make sure to subscribe. We're curious to hear what you think, what you want more of, and how we can improve. If you have feedback or an idea for a guest you'd like Clarence to sit down with, send us your thoughts at cityspeakpodcast@nlc.org. Join us next month for a new episode. Like and subscribe here or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.